And a bit of a recap yesterday, Kane. This seismic development for the second time in 12 months that Clayton Oliver is the subject of trade speculation. And for the second time in 12 months, it's Melbourne seen to be doing the tyre kicking. I mean, last time was the scare tactic, football's version of an intervention order, if you like, given the club was just exasperated with the behaviour and the lifestyle of their star midfielder. And now this year, you wonder if it's something a little bit more substantial or if Clayton is making it something a little bit more substantial, because he had a sit-down meeting with, I loved it on Channel 9, they called them Geelong Heavies yesterday, and there's none heavier than Steve Hocking, the CEO. If he's involved, it must have an element of seriousness about it, and Andrew Mackie as well.
Yeah, so the language that Tom Morris has been using when he's been reporting on this is that Clayton was a little bit blindsided by the fact that they had floated his name with other clubs. I just... like how naive he's been throughout this whole process, and those that are around him and his team or his management service, surely they're not surprised by this.
I think the world shifted a fair way from 12 months. I mean, I think he's got the right to be surprised. I think he's in a far better space, lifestyle-wise, professionally, than he was 12 months ago. And his season was a byproduct of the turbulent off-season that he had. But, I mean, I thought there was every expectation, as you keep saying, 6 years to run on a contract. He is their guy. He's knuckled down. He's done everything they've asked him after a fair period of anger and exasperation 12 months ago. But now it looked as I was all set for him to have a big off-season, knuckle back down. Christian Petrarca's committed again. It's all died down. And then we learn through all the reports that, if they are to be believed, that the CEO, Gary Pert's, just quietly and discreetly gone about sounding out a few clubs. It's got back to Clayton Oliver, and he's, to some degree, it would appear, taking matters into his own hands.
Yeah, well, and I think Melbourne are doing the right thing. I've got no criticism whatsoever around Melbourne other than getting sucked into paying him what they did a few seasons ago with the contract that they rewarded him for, which was always going to lead to some complacency like it does with a lot of players. So I would, as I said, be exploring every avenue to move him out of the club and clear up his salary cap space and get in some players that really want to drive the standards of the Melbourne Football Club, because that's exactly what they need. Melbourne need a seismic shift in terms of their culture and the way that they have gone about things since they won that premiership. And maybe this is that seismic shift that Paul Roos was speaking about yesterday that the Melbourne Footy Club need. Like we're not mucking around anymore. Like anyone who doesn't want to be here, anyone who's taken shortcuts and liberties, all right, we're going to try and do our best to clean that up. It's not going to take one off-season to get that done. So I've got no issue with what Melbourne are doing here.
The time to do that was last year, though. I mean, the last club that needs more drama is Melbourne. Club.
I think this is exactly what they need. I think this is the exact message that Melbourne, it's never,
for a club looking to calm the farm.
Well, it's never too late.
I reckon a club looking to calm the farm, how they treat their players, all that sort of. The last thing they need is to be dangling one of their most credentialed, highly credentialed midfielders out on the open market.
Yeah, no, if it was,
and going down this way.
If it was Clayton Oliver, just the player from 3 years ago, I would agree with you. But you got to package up everything that has gone on there, and
so that's it. He can't get back. You're just reading between the lines here. You're stamping his papers.
I don't think he will get back to the player that he was. And the further question to that is the player that he is now valuable in modern football? Because you can probably go and get James Warple for half the price on a 2-year contract to play the exact same role that Clayton Oliver plays right now. So I think that's what Melbourne's list management group would be weighing up. They're going to have to try and satisfy Cozzy Pickett and all sorts of other things. They've got a really nice group of young players coming through. They've kept some veterans. They don't need all of them. Like the deal for Jack Viney was a stretch, but they clearly wanted to keep that leadership around. Max Gawn is stitched up for a while as well. Christian Petrarca is the one that you would keep over Clayton Oliver if you had to choose, and I've got no issue with what they're doing.
So what do you make of the Josh Battle situation, Kane? Now, just to recap, St Kilda, for their Best and Fairest award earlier on in the week, did not invite, in fact, made it clear to Josh Battle that he wasn't welcome at their Best and Fairest count, and that was why he wasn't there, and he would go on to finish third in the count. Wasn't mentioned by the captain, wasn't mentioned by the president, wasn't referenced by the coach.
Yeah, it's disappointing. I can understand the disappointment on their side, but you would think like Richmond have done, it's a far better look to have him there. He's out of contract. He's not breaking a contract. And the thing that interests me about the Saints is they're trying to do exactly the same thing with, I assume, a whole heap of players, and that is to trade them in. Some of them would be in contract with their club. Some of them would be out of contract. So it's quite hypocritical for them to go and target other clubs' players when they have contracts or even when they don't, and want to get them into the St Kilda Footy Club. And then when one of their own leaves, even they're trying to do exactly the same thing, they spit the dummy. So if I was a player looking to go there, I'd be thinking, I'm not sure this is the place that I want to be if this is the way they handle minor hiccups.
Not to play devil's advocate, but what we don't know is exactly, maybe there's a way to do things. And maybe St Kilda felt, rightly or wrongly, that Josh Battle didn't go about it the right way. I mean, clearly they haven't done this just because he's decided to play for Hawthorn. Clearly there has to be more to it. So
what would you guess that he's done?
Well, there's a lot of yeah, there's a lot of unsubstantiated reports around the way he went about it communication-wise. Now, clubs can get burned in times like this. Did he say I'm staying and then I'm going? Or who knows? But at the end of the day, he's only exercised his rights to go. He's a free agent. He's out of contract.
Has he been talking negatively about the club to others?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
I don't know if that has or has. Yeah. Yep. I don't know if that has or hasn't happened. But I think, look, maybe St Kilda felt that it could have been handled better, and then therefore that's why the relationship is soured between player and club. But maybe he'll show up at the Peter Crimmins. When's Hawthorn's best and fairest? That'd be what Guinea would do. He'd just show up to Hawthorn's banner.
He may as well.
Why not? He might get a shout out there. But yeah, that was an interesting one. And it got me thinking about our list. So you asked me before the break, where's our list today? And I'm happy to workshop this with the Early Trade family and yourself because I like to keep things fluid. Where do you think we should go with our list today?
Biggest whingers in football?
I reckon biggest toy throwers out of the cot sort of setups. And I've compiled a little list already. The clubs who have filthied up when their players have made it clear that, yes, in fact, they would like to leave their organisation.
Does Taylor Walker get a mention?
Tex is in there for Jake Lever. Yep, Tex is going to get a mention. And we'll take some nominations on this. Tony Cochrane gets a mention as well. Duplicitous, he called Jager O'Meara back in the day. So, well, let's take some nominations. The clubs that have filthied up the most when their players have chosen to go to a rival club. The IMAR text line 0426 307 511, inspired by Josh Battle having his invitation yanked out from underneath him to the St Kilda best.
When does the footy club, St Kilda I'm talking about, find out what the compensation is?
Because when it opens, yeah, when the window opens.
So as soon as possible, really. Because these wheelings and dealings are happening right throughout the year. Pretty hard for the Saints to know what position they are going to be in without knowing what they're going to get. So the AFL would know by now. What's the hold up? I hope the Saints have been, not that we need to know, but I hope the Saints have got a fair indication of what it's going to be. And if it is pick 8 or 9, then it's a win. Absolute win for the Saints.
At the best and first, Ross Lyon got up and, I mean, if we're to take him at his word, he still doesn't know. He said, we hope the AFL does the right thing.
Well, that's ridiculous.
And gives us top-tier compensation.
They should know that by now because they need to know that by now. And yeah, I mean, they're in the dark still, according to Ross, which is not fair in my view. But what I will say is that it could work out very, very well for the Saints in a strong draft if they go in with 2 top 10 picks.
We had said this for a good week or so now that it was going to be Collingwood, lifelong Magpies supporter, his family as well. They gave Port Adelaide a big start, the Pies, and then they came rattling home with a big offer, a good roll sell as well. He wants to spend time playing more midfield.
Is he a midfielder, is the question?
Well, I mean, I defer to you on that as such as these.
I'm not certain he's a midfielder. Now, there's a lot of players that want to play midfield, and we see this all the time, like half forwards. The question is, when are you going to go play midfield? It doesn't often work. So
maybe they are going to. I mean, John Noble's leaving, so maybe they see him as a mix of halfback, on ball.
And that's what Collingwood do. They flip their players more than any other team probably. And you see where Sidebottom plays, where Chris plays, where Pendlebury plays, where Dacott. They all rotate through wing, half back, half forward, mid. But if he's desire, they're certainly paying him like an A-grade midfielder. They're paying him like Zach Merritt. So This would be a deal that probably he's earning more money than Zach Merritt. He'd be earning probably similar money to Zach Butters. These types of players, that's how he's been paid. Dangerfield, even in his prime, probably never earned this amount of money.
Yeah, but it's shifted a lot since then.
Exactly right. But Dangerfield, have you seen his resume? The guy's got 8 All-Australians.
Yeah,
so
I
it
know.
doesn't matter what era it is.
Well, it does.
Because
Since
even 2 years ago.
Yeah, the average wage is going to skyrocket to nearly more than $500,000.
He shouldn't even be earning more than Dangerfield now. So you can compare apples for apples right now. He shouldn't. No,
Patrick Dangerfield. How old's Paddy?
He's 34, but it doesn't matter. He's a far superior player to Harry Perryman. What I'm saying is that Collingwood are paying Perryman like he is an A-grade mid. So he's Sarong, like he's Brayshaw, like he's Heaney, like he's Warner. This is the cash that he is getting. And compare it today. I don't care what you can do that.
They have
right
to
now.
do it though. The market dictates that they have to. Yes, because if they don't,
just
Port
pay
Adelaide,
whoever's available.
Port Adelaide will.
Yeah.
So it feeds upon itself. It's a rapidly changing market when it comes to tenure and also wage. It's just a totally different sphere now. So Collingwood are only playing the hand that they're dealt. If they don't do it, another club will. I've had this conversation with clubs repeatedly over the last few weeks. Is that these big contracts for guys like Perryman and even Cumming and Lukosius getting to battle.
Does it work though? Unless you are a real needle mover, does this contract work for a B-grade footballer? So I get it for even Shea Bolton, because I think he has the potential to be a top 15 player in the game. Perryman's never going to be a top 100 player in football.
Yeah, but I think it can work for the rest of your list as well. So you can.
Or does it make the rest of your list jealous and go, what if you're...
Well, you tell me. I mean, you've been
inside...
Isaac
Quaynor and you're going, what? Perryman's getting 900? Like, what are we doing? Like, so I don't know. That there is the risk of that happening as well.
Does that happen?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, I think. Well, we've seen even to a lesser extent, just to Zach Merritt going, well, the Saints would be prepared to pay me this. What? I'm on this, and the Saints would give me that. So there is a bit of that. Obviously, strong clubs handle it better than others. But if I'm Quaynor or one of those players or De Goey and going, what Perryman's getting, he'd want to play well, is what I'm saying. And Lockie Schultz, they paid a big price to get. His performance didn't live up to that price. Not to say that it won't in time, but I mean, Perryman would want to be dominant in games of football through the midfield for the money that they are paying him at a big club with extra scrutiny and eyeballs on him.
Clubs who are filthy right up when a player requests a trade, Kane Corns, on this second day of October. And firstly, some great shout-outs on the IMAR text line on this, the early trade collective getting right around at Kane. 0426307511 is a real historic one here. Aaron Hamill to St Kilda. John Elliott. In fact, he might have preceded this, Jack Elliott, with a speech at the Carlton Best and Fairest that might have just about pushed Aaron Hamill out the door. They just were incredulous that he would choose the Saints over the Blues at that stage, given what St Kilda had not achieved and what the Blues had, and they weren't happy about it.
No, dirting up, says Daz. The Melbourne fans turning on Tom Scully, waving bags of money at him and booing from the terraces when he was still playing for the D's. The Phil Davis one was ugly.
This was a great one, yeah. Now, this is all inspired by Josh Battle and the way St Kilda have handled it, by the way, not inviting him to the Best and Fairest. Jack Gunston. It was Phil Harper, the old footy boss at the Crows, who said that they were dumbfounded that Jack Gunston had left. And he said the hardest part for us in all this was that we didn't know there was a problem. In fact, we were given all the indications there was no problem. And then he said he didn't want to risk having his Crows teammates talk him out of the move, so he just dumped it on them and basically put in the request, and that was the last they saw of him. So the Crows weren't happy with that. But my all-time favourite dummy spit is the same football club with Jake Lever. Now, when Jake Lever left the Crows, Tex Walker threw the toys right out of the cot, and the Texan claimed that Jake Lever had chosen money over success by leaving Adelaide. Well, as we know, it turns out he chose both, money and success, given they won the premiership at the D's and the Crows haven't won Jack for the Yonks.
He went further, Mark Rasciuto, than that, because he spoke about McGovern as well. And he
that
almost,
was Tex. Yep.
He almost mentioned the numbers that they were getting paid, like Charlie Cameron.
That's right.
And,
he divulged
and
them.
McGovern. He actually sort of said, the offers were or what they left for. So that was
extraordinary.
And I reckon since that moment, Mark Rasciuto's been very careful what he said. Obviously, he does breakfast radio, so he's in the media all the time, but he's very, very guarded in terms of what he says about the footy club now, and I think that was probably the catalyst for that. But yeah, Adelaide have lost a few over the journey, haven't they?
Jeff, clubs that have filthied up. As a Cat supporter, didn't we dirty up about the Gary Ablett Jr. trade? Bomber wouldn't speak to him
right.
in the later part of the season. Their relationship completely soured, you'll remember that. And this was a good one. Our man on SEN, Tony Cochrane. Jager O'Meara wanted out of the Suns in 2019. Tony called him duplicitous. He said the number one draft pick lied to his face when asked if he was departing the club. And he said they'd all been looked after. We'd sent them overseas for operations and all sorts of things. And I guess in life you would hope people show a little bit more loyalty.
Get involved on the Makita open line, 1300 23 55 48 for the Makita XG. More power, more efficiency, more Makita. Have you say on the clubs that have really spat it. This is, of course, all in relation to the Saints not inviting Josh Battle to the best and fairest after he's decided to leave. He finished third and they're out. So the biggest sooks at trade
The biggest
period.
sooks. Yeah. Let's get into that. The Makita open line, 1300 23 55 48. The Makita XGT.
Surely the
more power,
Bombers
more
have got a
efficiency,
few
more Makita.
with
You'd reckon.
Dodoro over the journey. I mean,
I've got to go.
he's been more likely to hold players and do things like that. But yeah, I reckon surely there's some Bombers fans out there that would have some for us.
And maybe it's a player that's dirtied up at being traded against his will. Now, Adam Treloar handled himself really well when he was forced out of Collingwood, and Brodie Grundy the same. But 220's text in, not a club this one, but Shane Woden dirtied right up once he was traded and let his feelings known in a TV interview. Biggest dummy spit. Carlton refused to play Lockie Henderson when he wanted to go to the Cats. I'm not sure, what were the origins of that? Was that him not wanting to get injured, or Carlton not wanting him to get injured to protect the trade, or was it that's it? They threw the toys
My
out?
recollection was the club that didn't want him to get injured, but those that followed it closer at the time and those supporters would let us know. In 2004, we won it, of course, and I remember there was always talk Josh Carr was going to leave, and we were so desperate for him to stay. And the day after the grand final on the Sunday, when we'd all had a pretty good time, he told us, because we all thought he was leaving. He got up. He said, "I'm not leaving. I'm not going anywhere." Felt like the Wolf of Wall Street a little bit. Yes, and we're all like erupted, but he still left.
And then shades of Dane Beams.
So he changed his mind and took off to Fremantle at the end of the 2004. Came back eventually in 2009, but yeah, I was flat about that one as a player. Loved Curry.
Did you throw the toys out?
No, I didn't. I was only young.
You sent him a nasty text message?
No, I didn't. But we did send a few nasty text messages to Nick Stevens, who left in 2003.
He put himself at the mercy of the draft. He was so keen to get
wanted to get to Collingwood, and they had beaten us in a prelim final. And Nick had been sort of in that prelim final. Nick had said, and it got back to us, Nick had said to one of the Collingwood players, "What are you tackling me for so hard? I'm going to be playing with you next year."
What?
So the club's just like so angry at this, and we'd been beaten by Collingwood. They were a big rival at the time, and he was desperate to get there. Said that he was leaving and wanted to play at Collingwood. I said, no, we're not sending you to Collingwood. You can go through the pre-season draft. And we ended up at Carlton. We won the premiership the next year, and Dom Cassisi was probably the 22nd player selected for the premiership, or around about. And on the footy trip after we'd won it in 2004, Dom Cassisi rang Nick Stevens. He said, "Nick, I just want to thank you for my premiership medal." It was very, very nasty. Not funny and hilarious. We're all for it, but
Did he reply?
The Nick Stevens one was really ugly. I'm going back a while now. He answered and he spoke, and he would have had a laugh about it, but it would have hurt. Like, you leave a club. We spoke about those sliding doors moments yesterday. You leave a club that your team you've left wins it the next year. Wouldn't be a nice feeling. But anyway, send us your text. We've got some rippers coming through.
Oh, how about this one from Ted? This might be the clubhouse leader, and it wasn't a club and it wasn't a player. It was the entire organisation. The AFL dirtied up when Buddy went to the Swans.
That's right.
They made them sign stat decks and all sorts of things to say the contract will be fulfilled. They had them marched into AFL
Changed
house.
the rules with the
Kohler was
living.
abolished. Yep. Pickers was marched in there as manager. Buddy was marched in there as manager. You will see this out. Didn't they dirty up? There was angry phone calls. That was Mike Fitzpatrick, went through Richard Collis and so on and so on. So that one reverberated for a long, long time.
Yeah, Sammy Edmund just out there, just working the phones like a good journalist would at this time. So hopefully we'll discuss whatever he has uncovered very, very shortly. But I mentioned just the free agents that the AFL released yesterday in terms of the end of next year. And there's some really good names on this. So in terms of the hot seat, I want to talk about how clubs that have an impending free agent handle it. Like someone like Darcy Fogarty at Adelaide. Well, what is Adelaide prepared to pay Darcy Fogarty, who has been a solid player, but not an A-grader? Are you going to give him a deal for life? Because there will be another club that will. There'll be a club, if Fogarty is the best key forward on the market as a free agent, we've seen the Perryman money, that he's going to offer him ridiculous money. So what do Adelaide do? Are they all in on this guy? Are they going to pay him like Sydney have paid Logan McDonald? Not fully sure whether he's going to be a genuine A-grade forward. So I think they're the clubs that are in the hot seat. I look at Brisbane. Cam Rayner is in line for a huge pay increase. How do Brisbane sort of sort that out with their salary cap? Starcevic, to a lesser extent, is going to get a huge pay increase. De Koning at Carlton is going to get a big one. So just the interesting factor is how much do clubs go and how close do they get to matching the offers that will come for these free agents. Also on the list, Brayshaw's the big one from Fremantle. Of course, Draper from Essendon, Jeremy Cameron. Not that I would think Jeremy's going to go anywhere, but some really good names. Luke Davies-Uniacke also in the mix will be highly sought after. Sammy Edmund is back.
Sorry about that, Kano.
That's okay.
I heard you mention Tom De Koning. Sam De Koning we didn't cover off earlier as well. Now, I know we said a week or two ago that there was no world in which anyone can see him being traded. That is absolutely still the case. Okay. I know that speculation continues to rumble there, given the way his season ended at Geelong, but he is going absolutely nowhere. But there's just been a bit to work through at Geelong, hasn't there, at the other side of the prelim defeat?
He going nowhere because the club are just saying, nah.
And him too. He's got no appetite.
He's got
no.
Okay. So he's not upset. He's not agitated by.
Oh, I'm sure there was disappointment, and he was upset, and he would have loved to have. I mean, who wouldn't? Given he felt he was fit and available, but not to the extent where he's, speaking of dummy spits earlier, where he's just said, I demand to be traded. That hasn't happened. So there is plenty to work through at Geelong, though, isn't there? So Mitch Duncan looks like he's going to stay, it would look like, on a new deal. And then they've got the issue of meeting Clayton Oliver. I tell you, if they did bring Clayton and Bailey in together, it's I mean, they back themselves in this space, Geelong, we know that, but you want to be well-resourced and ready to go with all those guys coming in, don't you?
You would. There's there's the potential for a few off-field headaches, but they would feel like they're the best club to be able to handle that with the culture that they've got. They've been there before. But yeah, just how they sort of fit everyone in their salary cap is the fascination for me.
But Bailey, that's for them. They're masters at that, though.
Well, how?
They are
we just keep
masters.
saying that, but what players just play.
Well, it gets checked off. I mean,
I understand. I'm not suggesting that they are, but what players just play for $200,000-$300,000 less across the board.
Yeah,
just to play for Geelong.
Because they've sold it so. They're contending almost all the time. Now, we overthink it. I reckon that's 75% of it. You're going to a good club that consistently performs. Everyone wants to play in the big games at the biggest time of the year. That's a big tick. And then haven't they sold? There was a time in another generation where no one wanted to go down to quote-unquote Sleepy Hollow. How boring. Geelong, you're an hour out of town. Nothing happens down there. Now it's the big carrot that all the players want. They want to get out of the limelight. They want to go and surf, and they want to... It's such a massive recruiting area too, the Western Districts of Victoria. They can seemingly got a catchment. I've got a family connection. I grew up way out west of Victoria, and they all want to go back there. Maybe it's just the way the world is now. It's such a fast world.
So would the AFL be upset
about
this? I mean, we spoke about how angry they were about Buddy Franklin. Like, this is a club that loses a prelim by a kick again. They won it in 22. They brought in all those players after 22, and a lot of them were young players. They got picked 7 in. Now, if they're going to go, we're going to bring Bailey Smith, prime of his career, 23 years of age, and Clayton Oliver, they're going to be right up there again. Does the AFL need to, I don't know, not that this is any criticism of Geelong, they're just a great club and doing what every club would do in their position. So please don't take this as any criticism. But the AFL, if they're not happy with Sydney getting Buddy, couldn't be happy with Geelong getting these two. after the success they've had. What,
Oh, I
13,
mean, they're only
13 prelims in 18 years, and they're just going to
No.
add another 2 A-graders?
They're only adhering to the rules that are laid out in front of them.
Of course they are.
At the end of as Sydney were too. Like, I thought that was ridiculous what the AFL reacted to that. I mean, Sydney, that was just probably the most covert seismic trade we've seen in our
Best
lifetime.
trade I've ever seen.
Yeah, but I just cannot believe it stayed secret for so long, forever, really. It's just total blindsiding. GWS thought they had him right up until they didn't.
Would that happen today? Is there a world in which that could be a secret today?
Is
it
just
different,
such
like
a good question.
12 years ago, or whatever it was, is with every person owning a camera, with everyone on social media, with
It only takes
with
one
managers
person.
squealing like never before, and I'm not suggesting would have been Franklin's manager, but it could have been someone else's manager.
It was so tightly held, that one. Andrew Ireland, Liam Pickering.
It would never happen again.
Lance Franklin, and a couple of board members that they didn't even let in initially for a long time at Sydney. It wasn't until right at the close that they brought it out, I guess, around the mahogany table at the Sydney Swans. So it was amazing they were able to keep that under wraps. Kano, if I was GWS, I'd be filthy. Another year, another exodus taking place. Perryman to Collingwood, the free agent, coming to Adelaide, the free agent. James Peatling's going to decide in the next couple of days, but he's definitely leaving. Xavier O'Halloran in contract and leaving, it appears, probably to the Western Bulldogs. Wade Dirksen, who hasn't played,
Don't know
he's
a lot
in
about
contract.
Wade.
I tell you what, they're filthy at that. They are really annoyed at that Wade would choose to pack up and leave. He's got some good reasons for doing so,
Where's
but they're
Wade
filthy
off
at that.
to?
I think it looks like Melbourne. Melbourne is the club that will take him on. He's got some talent and kicked some goals a couple of years ago, VFL level. He was the Giants' leading goal kicker in the second tier and played behind the ball this year and turned some heads. But I think he's got 3 kids under 3 or 4 and wants to get back or wants to get to Melbourne where he's got some family support. And next year, the Giants have got a real fight on their hands, it would appear, to keep Lek Alia, who has already had just a swarm of clubs trying to get him out the door this year. Now, he's committed to staying for next year at least when he's contracted, but I'd be filthy if I'm the Giants.
What about
filthy.
Finn Callahan?
And then there's Finn Callahan, of course, next year as well, probably the biggest one of the lot. And the Saints, well, the Saints will be hovering. They are already hovering.
So they never get players in, the Giants, do they? They rarely ever trade in players.
It's the way it's been set up. It's the way it's been set up.
Or is it just no one wants to go and play there?
Yeah, I can't answer
What's
that.
like if you were going to do a pie graph of the factors that means that it's really difficult to get players to go and play from other clubs to the Giants? Is it just
who won the Coleman?
Your man Hogan?
Yeah. So I mean, they got him in, albeit
but
he was pretty
like
desperate at the time.
on his last legs at
Yeah.
the time in terms of a football sense. So, yeah, I mean, there's the odd exception to that. He's Shaw and the like, but we're going along. Callum Ward's still playing, but that was when there was those Godfather offers for the players to go enjoy from other clubs. Phil Davis, I get all of that, but in recent times, incredibly difficult for the Giants to land a player that's going to make a significant difference to that footy club.
Now, that's my if I was. Have you got one? You know, no obligation to have one, by the way.
I was just thinking at the time, if I was Stephen Canilio, is it time to have a look around? He's from Perth. I'm not sure whether West Coast would be interested in that, and his contract situation has a long time left at the Giants on big money. But is he going to get the best out of his last 4 years at AFL level at the Giants? Because it's been a pretty brutal time for him. He's been through the captaincy, the axing when he was captain, taking the captaincy off him, to playing some pretty good footy, to having injuries left, right and centre this year. He looked like a broken man at the end of the season, and I get most of that was around his body and just the frustration around that. But does he need a change of club and a fresh start? If I was Stephen Canilio, would you entertain perhaps a fresh environment?
Yeah, interesting. I was going to mention, speaking of West Coast, this player today anyway, but I did just notice that Ryan Daniels over in Channel 7 Perth put him on the agenda yesterday, and it's Tim Kelly. I think there's a chance Tim Kelly could be traded in this trade period, and I reckon there's a chance he could end up at the Fremantle Dockers.
No.
So he's got one more year in his contract until the end of 2025. It's a big one. Yeah, well, Ryan is reporting it as well, but I've heard separately to that Tim Kelly could end up at the Fremantle Dockers in this window. Now, there's a chance, just one to watch. It's a watch, as they say. Kane, going forward over the next couple of weeks?
So Rhino says just that. Tim Kelly is a watch the next 12 months. He's out of contract at the end of 2025. No deal on the table for beyond that. His preference is to stay, but would consider
could this be
options.
Could this be a win-win? I mean,
Yes.
this is a guy who's on a big money deal. This is the one that he accepted upon leaving Geelong, of course. I think it was a 6-year initially, or a 5 or something. It was huge. So, again, new coach, new perspective, resetting, a new list manager as well. Maybe it's a win-win.
Fremantle are active though. Like how many things can you pull off in this?
Well, I mean, I don't put Tim Kelly in the same sphere from a value perspective as, say, a Shea Bolton. So I'm not sure if
or
they...
a Cozzy Pickett. No.
Or a Cozzy Pickett.
This one is not going to cost
He's
them
30, 31 next season.
a lot at all. And what you do is say if he's got, I don't know, 700,000 left on that last year, you can smooth out his money. You can give him some more security with a 3-year deal and can shore him up in terms of his longevity in the game, which may be of benefit to him if West Coast is saying, well, we're not negotiating your contract until halfway through next year. So I understand that. Pretty straightforward, but it's going to still take some salary cap room. And I just keep thinking of Chad Warner. I just keep thinking Fremantle have to position themselves to be in the best possible spot to land Chad Warner. And if taking up some even further salary cap for a Tim Kelly, who's a nice to have, but he's not, once again, he's not a difference maker with the way that he uses the football and how much he burns the ball, but he's consistent. He's another midfield body through there. I don't hate it, but I would hate it if all of these deals affect their prospects of getting Chad Warner this time next year.
Yeah, sorry, I did cut you off there because Ryan Daniels did go on to say in his tweet, Kelly's management spoke with the Fremantle Dockers, but the conversation didn't progress beyond a casual chat. I would say that's a reasonable chance to happen, that Tim Kelly will play
Really?
at Fremantle next season.